Well, this morning we welcome Dr. Travis Gratton with University Veterinary Care Center for this week's Pet Advice segment. Good morning, Dr. Gratton.
Good morning again.
Well, many Americans may be making plans to venture out and start doing a little traveling again, and that means taking their pet to a pet boarder. So let's talk about, preparing for that a little bit, what we need to do in advance. Are there any vaccinations or things that we need to do before sending our pet?
Right, like you said, people are really beginning to travel a lot again with the vaccinations and immunity on the rise in the country. A lot of people are taking advantage of their time to get out and about. A lot of them have not done a lot of boarding in the last year or so, so they may have forgotten some of the details of kind of what is required when you get there. Number of vaccines that almost all of the boarding facilities are going to require. Certainly rabies is kind of the number one. It's just kind of a public health thing. If there's a little tussle or a fight and somebody gets bit, then we don't have to worry about quarantining your pet after or during the board. The common combination vaccine, distemper, hepatitis, parainfluenza, parvovirus, the DA2 PPV vaccine is required almost universally. Kennel cough vaccine or Bordetella is probably the most common one that is required, and some facilities may have some restrictions on how long that one can go, whether it's a year or only 6 months. Kind of depends on their experience and background history in that facility. So check with them, make sure you know what they need.
Well, you talked about the kennel cough vaccine, but for the other vaccines, how recent do they need to be given before you take your pet?
Most of the facilities with those will go with kind of whatever the label recommendation is, the approval by the FDA. And so that would be 1 year initially on the rabies vaccine, can be 3 years depending on the community you live in, and that is controlled locally in the state of Kansas. And then the distemper hepatitis ones, those are generally annual. There are some 3-year ones on the market. Leptospirosis, which is kind of an optional vaccine, should certainly be considered in boarding facilities just because of the number of animals that are all coming together in one area, and it can really spread through those types of places. And it would be an annual one as well.
We'll talk a little bit more about kennel cough and what that is. I've heard about that associated with humane societies or animal shelters, being a concern there. But what exactly is kennel cough?
Well, kennel cough is one of the upper respiratory infections. Basically, it's tracheobronchitis, so the main airway, the trachea, the windpipe, and then the bronchi, the main branches off going into the lungs. Infection, inflammation, they're highly contagious disease. Specifically, the term kennel cough usually refers to Bordetella bronchoseptica, which is a same genus or group of bacteria as Bordetella pertussis, the classic whooping cough of children. Very similar, dry, hoarse, hacking type of cough, really persistent, really annoying. In more general terms, kennel cough really is this big complex of viruses. There's 8 or 10, probably up to 12 viruses on the list at this point. Some of those are distemper and adenovirus 2, parainfluenza, which are in that combination vaccine that we mentioned a minute ago. Others, unfortunately, there is not vaccines for. Mycoplasma is kind of a growing one in the country, and then canine influenza, there's a couple of strains. They've been on kind of haven't seen as much of that lately. Up until lately. So.
Well, it sounds like the key here is just to plan ahead before taking your pet to the pet boarder.
Yeah, definitely check with what is required at the facility, but even if they don't require some things, you might want to touch base with your veterinarian, see what really is the best plan for having your pet vaccinated and protected, because they are going to be in a facility where there's going to be a lot of other animals from around the area and occasionally from across the country as people pass through, drop dogs off at a daycare facility or something. So.
All right, Dr. Gratton, thank you so much for being with us today. And if you'd like more information about University Veterinary Care Center, just head over to universityvetcare.com.